Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about understanding your Myers-Briggs results. And I know it can be really confusing sometimes when you get your results, so this video is all about giving you clarity. So when you get your Myers-Briggs results, it's kind of confusing. There's a lot of information on there. What does it all mean? I think it's important to understand a little bit of background about the Myers-Briggs test. Myers-Briggs is based on Carl Jung's theories of personality development. And as such, it's a theory. That's all it is. So keep that in mind as you go through and don't take these results too seriously. Another thing to understand is that this is not a diagnosis. It's not like you get your results and these results are you and that's it. Like this is who you are. As a matter of fact, in a lot of cases, many cases, people's final test results or indicator results are not actually their personality type results. And in fact, it takes a process like this, like what we're going to do here and now, to confirm your results and or change them or shift them so that they're more aligned with who you really are. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that no type, no preferences are better one than the other. They're all good. It's all neutral. So no matter what you are, it's great. Okay, so let's talk about what the concept of preference is in the first place. One thing that's really important to understand is that this is not an indicator of mental health. It's not an indicator of IQ. It's not even really fully an indicator of who you are as a personality either. It's just an indicator of certain preferences. So let's talk about preferences. You have a preferences for the right hand or left hand. You probably started exhibiting those preferences at a really young age. Now, just because you're right-handed doesn't mean you don't use your left hand. It doesn't mean that you'd want to cut off your left hand, right? You still use it and need it. It just means that you have a preference or a dominance for the right hand. And it's very much the same with Myers-Briggs. You have a preference for one thing or another. It doesn't mean that you don't use the other thing. And in fact, all of us use all of the different traits that we talk about in Myers-Briggs. So, quick overview of the different personality preferences, the four different dichotomies or the four different scales. The first is extroversion, introversion. That's whether you source energy from the external world or the internal world. The second is intuition versus sensing, whether you prefer to gather information about the world in a way that's recognizing patterns and abstract theories versus from the concrete five senses. The third is a preference for thinking or feeling, and that's how you make decisions about the world, whether you prefer to make decisions from a thinking place, black or white, yes or no, right or wrong, or from a more feeling place based on values and outcomes. And finally, the judging perceiving dichotomy. The judging is people who generally like to make decisions and check things off of lists versus the people who have a preference for perceiving and prefer to make lists and open up things and continue to gather information. So that's the basic overview of Myers-Briggs. And one thing to understand is that this is not an end of a conversation. It's not like once you've decided what you are or once you get your results and that's it, and this is who you are set in stone concretely. It's more like the beginning of a conversation about who are you really and what are your preferences. So many different things can influence your type results. The first is what stage of life you're at. This is known as type development. So at a young age, you might exhibit certain preferences, and then as you get older, you might start developing other preferences. As you go through life and you learn and you evolve and you grow, you might find yourself expressing an appreciation for some preferences that you didn't really like as much as a youth. So for example, you might as a youth exhibit a lot of extroverted behavior because that's your natural preference. And as you get older and you start meditating or going to India or meeting people that help you develop this more introverted or introspective side of you. So one of the things that really influences your results is what stage of life are you at. The second thing that can really influence your results are your expectations going into the the test. So a lot of times, and I shouldn't really call it a test, we prefer to use the term indicator. But as you go into it, as you go into the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, sometimes we can go in work mode, where we are taking the indicator from a sense of wanting to apply it to a work environment. And if we go in work mode, we might express a tendency or express a preference towards certain personality traits that are more aligned with the work that we're doing. In other words, we're letting our environment and our circumstances dictate how we show up for the test. Or if we show up for the test in a playful mode, like just trying to have some fun and figure it out and try something new, we might end up with different results there. So pay attention to how you come into the test or how you went into the test and note, did I come in with certain expectations about what I was going to use this for and how this was going to come out? Another thing that can really influence your results is the environment that you grew up in. And I had a personal experience with this that I'll share because I think that it's really relevant and it can really help you understand. Whenever I took Myers-Briggs, I always came out as an ENTP. So I had a preference for the thinking function versus the feeling function. And no matter how often I took the test, I always came out ENTP. But when I went to get my certification in Myers-Briggs and I was in the room and they split us up into the different tables with our type-alike groups. In other words, I was at a table with all ENTPs. What happened was that as the ENTPs were doing what ENTPs do, which is debate and argue, and not in any malicious way, just like they really like to talk about ideas and debate their ideas, who's right, who's wrong. The professor was observing me in that group and was noticing that I wasn't really fully engaged in this group. And over the course of a couple days of watching me in action, he observed that he thought I was probably in the wrong group, and he called me over to him and he said, "Listen, Michelle, I've been watching you and I think I want to move you to a different table." And I was like, "Okay, sure, you're the boss, you're the expert. Where do you think I belong? You think I need to go over there with the introverts?" He's like, "Oh, no, you're definitely not an introvert." But this thinking feeling dichotomy, you came out, you typed as a T, but I really think you're an F. And I'm like, an F? No way. I've never been an F. Like, I always type as a T. If there was one of the 4 things that I thought I was, it was definitely the T. He's like, "Just play with me here. Let's see what happens." So he actually called the whole room to attention and made the announcement that I was going to be switching tables, which is not something that we really did in that nobody else had switched tables. And it was kind of an unusual circumstance. And when he announced that I was going to be moving from the ENTP table to the ENFP table, the ENFPs literally stood up and cheered that I was going to join their table. And when they did that, and when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, these are my people. I felt it. And so I tell you this story because even to this day, when I take that Myers-Briggs test, I still sometimes type as an ENTP, but I know that I'm an ENFP, and that's what really matters. So in terms of your results, if there's a part of it that doesn't feel quite right, keep in mind that it's not your type. It's not considered to be a best fit type until you corroborate the results, until you feel like those results really reflect who you are. Oh, and another really important thing about that is that one of the things that really impacts your type, especially if you come out as a different type than you really, really are, is your environment that you grew up in as a child. So going back in hindsight, I was like, why did I keep coming out as an ENTP if I'm really an ENFP? And what I realized, and what I think will be really enlightening for you, is that as a kid, as a natural ENFP, what I wanted was approval and appreciation, and I wanted to be a star, and I used to dance and sing for my family, and they never really liked that much. My family was more of the ST type. They were more focused on my grades, and they wanted me to be really good at math and all this stuff. And so what I did was I kind of oriented myself around how I could get my love and attention and affection needs met by being really good at the thinking part of life. And so I developed myself into this very T-focused person but it wasn't necessarily a true reflection of who I am deep down inside. So that's a really important thing for you to consider is like, are you expressing your natural tendencies when you take this indicator, or are you coming from a place of still trying to meet your needs the way you did as a child, which potentially if you grew up in an environment that was kind of opposite to you, could have been, not super congruent or aligned with your true nature. So last thing you want to think about when you look at your results, or one of the last things, is that you'll see something about, it's a confidence indicator. And the confidence indicator is intended to show how confident the exam, the test, the Myers-Briggs indicator is that your result is actually your result on each of the 4 scales. In other words, you might have a very high confidence indicator on extroversion, introversion, which indicates the test is fairly certain that this result is true. Or it might have a very low confidence indicator, which means this is what we think is the case, but we're not 100% sure. So take a look at those confidence indicators. And when you find one that's really high, generally you feel pretty certain that that's a good fit. But look at the ones where the confidence indicator is low. Those are the ones where you'll want to really dig in and say, what's really true for me? A lot of people will say, oh, I'm very extroverted or I'm very introverted. And they'll think that confidence indicator indicates the degree to which you're extroverted or introverted, but it doesn't. It simply indicates the degree to which the test is confident that this result is accurate. According to Carl Jung and Myers-Briggs, you have a preference and it's one or the other. It's not both. So, you can take that or leave it. I've always struggled a little bit with the idea that I can't have it all and I can't be it all, but I invite you again to just consider this as a tool, and really a tool based on a theory. So it's not set in stone. It's only as relevant and as accurate as you decide that it is for you. Thanks for watching this video. So now, how would you like a juicy free gift to help you grow your business in a way that's purpose-driven so that it adds value and makes an impact on the world, that it's aligned with who you really are, aligned with your personality, your true self, and also lifestyle friendly to help you have more freedom of time, more financial freedom? If this sounds good to you, then download my Monetize Your Magic playbook. Click on the link below to get access to the entire playbook for free. You're welcome.